Hi, everyone, and welcome. We're so excited to kick off the AAMC Virtual Fair this year with a robust discussion on how to gauge when you're ready to apply. I'm joined today by four colleagues who each will share their expertise on ways that you can evaluate your preparedness for applying to medical school. So we will describe the role of mission and finding a medical school that is a great fit for you. You will hear about holistic review and how that impacts preparedness for application to medical school. And then finally, you'll hear from three of our colleagues who will provide you with tips on how to identify and gauge your readiness for application. So you'll hear from pre-health advisors as well as admissions deans. So let's get started. I am Layla Miri. I am the Associate Dean for Admissions at the Robert Larner College of Medicine, and I'm here to talk with you a little bit about how to identify how the mission fits with your personal why and the reasons that you're choosing to go to medical school. So this word cloud that you see on the left is really fun. It's a product of another similar presentation a few years ago, and it still holds true to today. These are the reasons that our applicants indicate that they're interested in studying medicine. And so as you're thinking about your personal why, what are those things that are important for you? In addition to obviously becoming a skilled clinician and a physician, what do you need along the way? Who are the patients that you want to serve? Who do you want your peers to be over these 4 years of medical school and beyond? What type of support do you think that you'll need during this process? How do you learn best? What's the best curriculum that's supportive of you as a learner? What issues are important to you? And how do you want to see those issues reflected at the medical school that you're studying? And what are the career pathways of graduates from this program? These are all important things that you should be thinking about as you're applying to medical school. And so where you can begin answering these questions would be to start with the mission of the medical schools that you're interested in applying to. Now, understanding the mission can be challenging a little bit, and figuring out what that mission reflects can be it takes some time for you. I want to share with you that the mission itself of the medical school, unlike what you might have experienced as you were deciding to select your undergraduate institution, is very important for everything that we do as an institution. So the mission specifically informs the structure and content of the curriculums that we offer. The mission impacts student life and the support services that we're able to advance to our students. The mission influences admissions practices and priorities. So who we admit is an individual who has a personal mission that resonates with the mission that we have for the institution. And the mission is also reflected in the professional activities of our students while they're with us, and hopefully when they graduate from the medical school. So again, mission is really important. Where can you find the mission of the medical school? So make certain that you take full advantage of resources that are available to you, specifically the MSAR, the Medical School Admissions Requirements resource that's available to you. And all medical schools have entries that we are able to put into this document for you. And very importantly, as you click on the overview, the mission is available. And a couple of years ago, MSAR made it possible for us to have an expanded mission section where we have lots of space to speak about the mission statement itself, the curriculum, what our students experience as they're going through the curriculum, and where our graduates land with your degrees. So all of the things that I mentioned earlier that are reflected in the mission that we have generally are available to you in the MSAR for you to find a school that is in alignment with what you feel you need in terms of an incoming student and an incoming learner, and where do you even apply? So I'm not going to talk about my institution today. I'm just giving you an example of where you can look at the mission of an institution and see how the mission is specific to identifying types of students and some of the goals that we have in our curriculum. So you can see research is in there. You can see that bringing hope to patients in there, engagement with our communities in there. So again, focus on the mission statement so you can find the school that's appropriate for you. Okay, so next steps for you, quick and simple. Remember, where you go to medical school is really important. I cannot tell you how many students have told me, I just need to get in. It is so much more than just getting in. You need to get into the right place, the place that will support you as a learner, a physician in training, and a future physician. Look at the different missions that the schools have, identify the ones that have missions that are in alignment with your personal mission. Find the mission aligned schools for yourself in the MSAR. And I'm talking a little bit longer on this slide because I want to give you an opportunity to point your camera to this QR code. This is a very resource robust website on the AAMC website, the Anatomy of an Applicant. And there you can have lots of helpful information that will support you as you're going through the application process. Okay, good luck to all of you. And I'm really excited to hand this over now to our next speaker.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Amy Adams. I'm the Director of Student Affairs Alignment and Holistic Review at the AAMC. And I'm going to talk a little bit about holistic review, as well as the recent Supreme Court decision on Harvard and UNC's admissions. So first, what is holistic review? Well, we define it as a flexible, individualized way of assessing an applicant's capabilities, by which balanced consideration is given to experiences, attributes, and academic metrics, or EAM, and when considered in combination, how the individual might contribute value as a medical student and future physician. There are a few core principles as part of our framework. First core principle focuses on the criteria. So we think they're broad. They should be broad-based, so considering a wide range of factors. They need to be linked to institutional mission and goals, and they promote diversity and inclusion as essential to excellence. AAMC defines diversity broadly to encompass all aspects of human differences, including but not limited to those you see on your screen. So examples include ethnicity, gender identity, disability, geography, that type of thing, and many others. The second core principle focuses on these E's, A's, and M's and really identifying a balance of them, bringing that in to the screening, the interviewing, and the selecting so that schools are really focused on those mission-aligned applicants. I also encourage schools to apply those E's, A's, and M's equitably across their entire candidate pool, and to work to make sure that their criteria are supported by local performance data that are linked to a likelihood of success for medical students at that particular school. This will look different from place to place. Now a little bit about the EAM tool itself, just some quick definitions. We think about experiences as really being those life circumstances and chosen activities. So it's really about schools understanding the applicant in their context. What did and didn't they have access to, as well as what they've chosen to pursue. So things like research or volunteer opportunities. The attributes are skills, abilities, personal characteristics, and demographic factors. So examples include cultural humility, intellectual curiosity, being multilingual, first gen to go to college. And then there are those academic metrics, and those are things like your grades, your grade trends, your MCAT score, that type of thing. The third core principle encourages admission staff and committee members to certainly give that individualized consideration to applicants, but also think about what they need in their class in order to achieve the mission that they've identified for their institution. So in short, in a holistic admissions process, the medical school should be able to draw that straight line from their mission and goals down through their admissions criteria and see those integrated into their screening, interviewing, and selecting phases, as well as back into outreach and recruitment, and that medical student experience itself. A little bit about what holistic review isn't. Holistic review isn't about making up for previous injustices, nor is it a quota system. It also doesn't mean that a school is going to be reading every single application, but rather they're focusing their resources on identifying those criteria to really screen in those mission-aligned applicants who are likely to succeed at their school. Holistic review also doesn't lower standards. It expands and grounds them in the medical school's mission, goals, and what it's deemed essential for their learners. And then finally, holistic review doesn't ignore academic metrics. Academic readiness is really critical. And in a holistic review process, the schools are considering an applicant's academics in the context of their full journey to medical school. A little bit about the Supreme Court ruling. As you probably read in multiple articles and headlines, there was a recent case in front of the Supreme Court between Harvard and UNC that was focused on what colleges and universities could consider in making their admissions decisions. I want to be very clear, nothing about the Supreme Court decision has any impact on what an applicant may share about themselves. So just a reminder, as you'll hear folks talk about, the medical school is the authoritative source on what that school is looking for in its applicants. So go to their website, go to MSAR, talk to people from that school, talk to their admissions teams. Also, medical schools really do want to know who you are as a person, and that includes your identities, your communities and experiences, and how those connect to why you want to be a doctor and what you want to do as a doctor. So admissions officers look for candidates with experiences, attributes, and metrics that align with their school's mission. And you'll hear other speakers talk about that today. And so take all of this together, and we really encourage you to take the time to reflect on your own journey and motivations for becoming a doctor, and think about how you can present that clearly and compellingly in your essays, in your application, and your interviews. Just really quickly, the Federal Department of Education and Justice released some guidance at the end of August, and this just really reaffirms what the decision itself said, which is that institutions may still consider applicants' lived experiences, including those related to their race. So again, applicants aren't constrained in what you can write and talk about in your application and interviews. And then these are just some concrete examples from the Department of Education guidance. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Wendy.
Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Wendy Laughlin, and I'm Assistant Dean and Director of the Reed York Health Professions Advising Office at the University of Maryland. And Layla and Amy set us up really well to have a conversation about what those attributes, or also sometimes we call them personal competencies, are. And I invite you to scan the QR code on my page, which is a resource that we've developed to help our students engage in really quality self-assessment of how far along they are in developing those personal attributes and competencies. So you can see on the screen that the attributes and competencies that years ago, the AAMC convened medical school deans and directors and advisors like myself to have a conversation, not just about metrics, but about what are those qualities that we want our physicians to have. And you can see service orientation, resilience and adaptability, integrity and ethics, a desire to learn, reliability and dependability, and social interpersonal skills and teamwork. So within the applicant workbook, there are a number of sheets that we offer students to do this self-assessment. And if you take a look at it, you'll see one of the sheets is helping to calculate your GPA and look at metrics. But a lot of the workbook is inviting you to really think about how to kind of map the experiences that you've had against the attributes so that you can kind of self-assess whether you've developed those competencies that we know that medical schools would like to see that you've developed. When you think about your application, you should think that the reader is trying to answer 4 key questions. And so your application should really try to answer these questions for the reader. Can you do it? Will you do it? Should you do it? And should you do it here? So can you do it? It's not really very useful to think in terms of averages writ large, because there are over 160 allopathic medical schools in the country, and they have their own profiles for students. And I think that Layla mentioned for you the MSAR, which is a great resource for you to start with to help understand whether or not you fit within the profile from an academic perspective of the students that school admits. So you don't really need to meet their average, but you want to fall within the middle 50% of students that they accept, or at least the 10th to 90th of the students that they accept. And so using the MSAR as a tool to help you gauge whether or not you sort of can neutralize the importance of your academics for that particular school is a really good place to start. Schools are concerned not just with grades and averages, though, but trends. Some students start off a little slowly, but they build over time. Once they get into the advanced course requirements, they're starting to really hit their stride. For some students, it takes a little bit longer. There are record enhancer post-bac programs available to help students continue to build. So there are lots of different ways to pursue your academic path. And this is not always a linear process for everybody, and that's okay. And rely on your pre-health advisors to help you figure out what your timeline ought to be. Will you do it? So that's an opportunity for you to describe your motivation. But remember, this is an evidence-based process. And so what you've done in the past tells schools an awful lot about what you're likely to do in the future and will help them to understand your intent. So you should have some of the experiences in clinical and service and research that support what you have described your motivation to be. Should you do it? That comes out in the interview. So again, this motivation for some students, if it's laying more at an extrinsic level, like what do other people want from me, or what kind of financial remuneration might this career offer me? Sometimes it's hard to communicate to a school that this is something that you're really personally invested in. So you want to make sure your motivation is really intrinsic, and your interview and your letters will support that level of motivation. Should you do it here really comes down to what Layla was talking about in the beginning: fit with school, understanding the mission statement, and making sure that there's alignment between what your goals are and what the schools can offer you. So that will come out in your secondary responses. I look forward to our discussion during the Q&A, and I'm happy to pass it over to the next speaker.
Good morning. My name is Sheila Lahode. I'm here from McGovern Medical School at UT Health Houston, and so excited that you all are here learning a little bit about how to think about applying for medical school and what the best time is. And I actually love Wendy's the whole notebook and the way of approaching it and looking at kind of a great time frame. I'm going to start off here with a slide, just a little bit about our mission statement. And again, as you think about the MSAR and all those mission statements, it really is important to look at them. And in our case, we are a big public university in Texas. And so part of our mission statement does look at serving the population in Texas and beyond, but we do have a certain percentage that have to be in-state residents. So that's another thing to look at in the MSAR. And we're really looking here for a diverse body of future physicians. We want physicians that will take care of patients as their main activity, and some that will do a hybrid of research and patient care, and some that are more focused in research as well. So different ways that we're also looking at what a student brings from their list of activities and their experiences before they come to medical school. So when we're looking at personal experiences, we're definitely looking at the breadth and depth of the educational experience, and across the board that, it's obviously something to think about, and that it does have a metric base, but it's definitely not the only thing we look at. Many students will come to us with advanced degrees, so that's something that we will look at as a way they're demonstrating interest and showing their passions. Actually, almost all of our students come with a robust history of community service and volunteer activities, and leadership positions that they can demonstrate through their experiences in college, high school, even kind of leading on, since we have many non-traditional applicants. And also the awards and honor societies that they feel are important. It's really important that our students get the opportunity to discuss challenges to their educational background. We think a lot about that, and we do think a lot about students who work in college. I think it's really, quite a testament to many of our students who seem to be able to work 20 plus hours a week and do everything they need to do in college, as well as being able to do a few extracurriculars. And the same thing is for student athletes who clearly have amazing demands on their time. We think about that also as kind of balancing their time, and some of those things really impact the ability for students to maybe take as many courses, or for they may have a GPA impact. So we really do think about all of those pieces together. And again, we look at all of their experiences in healthcare and their extracurriculars, and as well experience in research. But as I said, we don't need all of our future physicians to be researchers, so it's not something that we say every student needs to do. And we also look at their goals for the future. And one of the things, looking at I love the word that Wendy used, neutralizing different pieces. So when we think about a student who had a lower GPA, we love to see either an upward trend, or looking at whether a student did a post-baccalaureate program, if they did a graduate science program. It gives them the opportunity to show that they've, to really demonstrate to us that they can handle the rigors of medical school. Because we're not really thinking of the GPA in isolation. We're thinking we just need students who can handle the rigor. So it's a great place to demonstrate it. And as well, the MCAT, again, looking at that MSAR to see where the MCAT falls for each of the schools that you're thinking about. Okay, and then one of the things we also think about in terms of timing, and this is something we kind of looking retrospectively, what would keep a student from being interviewed? Someone who did not have metrics that looked a certain way, and so they didn't take the time to, and the time might actually be a year or two to really demonstrate that intellectual heft in a graduate program or post-bac program, or taking the time to repeat the MCAT. Did they actually have a quality application? Did they get everything in? Were they really reading through and making sure their essays were organized, clear, thoughtful? Did they have the time to take all of their essays to get them reviewed, and to make sure that they really were grammatically correct? Believe it or not, we really do look at pieces like that, and that they really had a wonderful message. And then the extent of their healthcare activities, the frequency and consistency. And again, it's not a race to get here. I think it's important that our students take the time to have really demonstrated that this is what they want, that this is what they're passionate about, because it's so much work, and we need to know that everyone coming here has the heart to do it. Okay, and before I pass it on, I am going to just real quick mention that at the end of our presentation, which we're going through quickly, there's going to be a nice set of time to ask questions. And we're going real quick because we know many times there are so many questions that we can barely get through them. So I will pass it on.
Thank you, Dr. Lahode. And hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Very excited to be here. My name is Yannis Katroulis. I'm the Interim Associate Dean of Admissions at George Washington University in DC. And as everybody mentioned, it is very important to understand each school's mission. Schools are very, very different, and it's not just to get in, as Dr. Amiri mentioned, but where you go is very, very important. So make sure that you do your research. Make sure you look at the websites. Make sure you look at each school separately and understand what they're looking for. So, for example, our mission here at George Washington University School of Medicine and Health Sciences is dedicated to improving the health of our local, national, and global communities by educating a diverse workforce of tomorrow's leaders in medicine, science, and health sciences, healing through innovative and compassionate care, advanced biomedical, translational, and health services delivery research with multidisciplinary collaboration, and promote a culture of excellence through inclusion, service, and advocacy. So as you can see from our mission, we're looking for applicants that are service-oriented, that want to make a change. And you'll see that actually on our website. The GW applicant is the applicant that will want to become a physician citizen. What does that mean? It means that we're going to give them all the necessary tools to go out to their communities and make the necessary changes. And as I tell a lot of applicants when they ask me, you don't have to be the Secretary of Health or the Surgeon General to make a change. Actually, if each one of us makes a small change in our communities, you can understand the huge impact this will have in healthcare in our country. So what are some things that we're looking for in our applications? As mentioned by Amy before, although in a different order, we're looking at attributes. Is the applicant committed to lifelong learning? Are there experiences that show sustained and effective leadership, for example? Is the applicant committed to advocacy and innovation to achieve change? Because again, that's a very important element of a physician citizen. Does the applicant have strong interpersonal skills and ability to communicate? And that we can also see during the interview. Experiences, what are the most meaningful experiences that this applicant had, and how were they described? Again, we're not looking only for clinical experiences. And as mentioned by Dr. Lahoti, we're looking for people that have also work experience and other experiences. And we take that into account as well. If someone needs to work for over 20 hours a week while they're studying or they're in college and in order to support themselves and or their families, that this is something that we take into account when we review their academic performance. And then, as I just said, the academic performance is also important to make sure that the applicants, if they matriculate to our school, they're ready to go through our very rigorous curriculum. And part of that academic achievement is, of course, the GPA and the MCAT and other academic achievements that some applicants might have in terms of research, publications, and so forth. Although it's not necessary, and again, as was mentioned, we're not looking for every applicant to be a researcher. Some statistics from our class, so you can understand what our students look like. 51% female, 48% male. Although the average age of our matriculated students is 24 years, it ranges from 20 to 38 years. We have a lot of non-traditional applicants that had a lot of life experience and they're not right out of college. Of course, we get those as well, but we do look at applications from people that have that are non-traditional. Our students represent 27 states. DC, as you know, DC is not a state, and countries such as China, Kuwait, Bahrain, and Canada. Our average MCAT score is 512, and our average undergrad overall GPA 372. We had over 81 colleges represented in our first year class. And people have varied majors in biological sciences, psychology, public health, engineering, and international politics. So my advice to you is do your research. One school might consider you ready and another might not. What is the focus of the curriculum? Look at the learning objectives. For us, public health is a big part of our curriculum. So people that usually apply to us or want to come here are interested in public health, population health. And the mission determines as well the not only the focus, but also the resources that are available and the things you can do while you're at school, the programs that are available to you, the extracurricular activities, the student life. So all those are guided by the mission of the school. Be yourselves, tell your story. We want to hear your story. Be original in that. Careers and lives are not straight lines. A lot of times are zigzags, and we want to know what brought you here. So make sure you describe that very well. And remember that you are, we have so many applicants, and we want them to be a good fit for us, but we also want to make sure that we are a good fit for you. And by reviewing our websites, by looking at all the different elements that we're looking for in applicants, will ensure that not only you get into medical school, but you go to the place that you will be successful and in an environment that you will thrive. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all of our presenters. Okay, folks, so this is the time that you've probably been waiting for. We will take all of the questions that you've given to us in the chat. And if there's other questions you have, please continue to drop them in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer most of them to our ability. Nadia, I see you have your hand raised, but if you could please use the Q&A function and drop your question in the chat, we'd really appreciate it. That way we can kind of compile the questions that are coming in that are similar. So Dr. Lahoti, a question has come up more than once about the comments that you mentioned about retaking the MCAT. And so can you give general comments about when an individual should consider retaking the MCAT? How does your school look at multiple MCATs? And what would you consider better MCAT performance? So that's a series of questions that I compiled into one.
Okay. First of all, we absolutely look positively at someone who had a lower MCAT and takes the time to study and gets a better MCAT score. There is nothing negative about not having done well the first time. It really is the heart of, is someone willing to take the time, make the effort, and improve? And we also, I have to say, we do not look askance at reapplicants, and we even have some reapplicant workshops, because we really do think that it's important to look at someone's passion for being here. And in terms of MCATs, I'm not going to give you a specific number per se, but you can look at the percentiles of the MCAT nationally and kind of what the average accepted MCATs are. And again, I think it's kind of nice to go through the MSAR and look, what is the average 25th percentile acceptance kind of at different schools, to get a bit of a sense of what would be on the lower side. That being said, if someone's at the very, very, very high end, I'm not sure it makes any sense for them to reapply with a new MCAT. If somebody has something like a 519, is it really worth it? Absolutely not, because that piece is already there as someone who is clearly competent. And we don't like to think of MCAT as something to keep people out. We just want it to be a chance for them to demonstrate that they are willing to put in the time and effort to get better. Because at the end of the day, we've had many students with MCATs on the lower side that come in here, and I like to say they have a fire in their belly and they just tear up the track, and they get into wonderful residencies, and they really, do a great job here and are an important part of our community.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lahoti. So I'm going to ask this question of all of the presenters. There's a question in here about what are your thoughts about mental health episodes and the impact on the GPA? So Wendy, if you could contextualize that for us in your workbook kind of model, and then Dr. Katrolis and Dr. Lahoti, if you could answer that question as well, please.
Yeah, thanks for the question. It's an important one. I think a lot of times that this is exhibited in the transcript, and there may be periods of time where a student has withdrawn from a semester or struggled for a time. And I think that there's only one way to sort of address your academics, and that's with what you do next. And so I think that schools pay a lot of attention to students taking their time. And this is, related to mental health or really any setbacks or anything that might occur that needs you then to take some reflective time so that when you apply, you really are ready for the rigor and the complications that medical education presents. So I would say that from the workbook perspective, it's really the self-assessment, the figuring out how to, address where you are at this moment in time and that your readiness is there. I will say that there is no requirement that you disclose anything about your application that you feel like would be better talked about once you join your medical school class. And there are resources for students who need some additional assistance once they get to medical school. So, talk with your advisor, talk about how you want to frame where you're at and your readiness. Be ready because it's hard, and demonstrate that, like I said, by all the things that you've done most recently.
Yes, I totally agree with Wendy. We're looking at resilience as well. This is a big element of an application. And if there are issues and you feel comfortable talking about them, tell us about what happened. Tell us about your experience. Tell us about your self-reflection and what are the steps that you took when you had a setback to recover from that, to move on to the next step. And there are people with some setbacks and some missteps, and it's okay. Things happen in life, and it doesn't stop when you go to college or when you go to med school. As long as you're able to explain if there is an issue, to explain that in your application, and let us know about what you did to improve, to get better, to actually solve an issue that you had, that shows that you're resilient and that you're ready to move on to the next step. And I would encourage you, if you're comfortable telling us your stories and what happened, I would encourage you to include that in your application.
And one thing that is really important to remember, anything that is on the application would be something that might be asked about. So definitely something that an applicant should be willing to talk about and not be too emotional about. The other piece is it's quite introspective if someone realizes, instead of hurrying up and applying and jumping into medical school, it's great to be introspective and say, let me take time to myself. One, make sure this is the right decision for me, and make sure that I have taken time to, perhaps heal from an event that may have taken place during college, because it's much better to be in a state where someone is feeling better and has taken care of their own mental health. After all, it's kind of like the airplane. If you can't take care of yourself first, how are you going to take care of patients?
Thank you so much. We have a question here about non-traditional students. How do you view them? Yanis, do you want to take that question? What are your thoughts on non-traditional applicants?
Yes, thank you, Leila. We do get a lot of non-traditional applicants. For example, we've had applicants with a different career. They wanted to switch careers, and we had people working in business or economics, or even in Wall Street, or in other professions. And they realized that the real passion is to help others and treat patients. And they showed in their trajectory that they were serious about it. They were really dedicated. And the admissions committee, I'm sure they look into that. And if someone shows the passion and the dedication, it is even, it's perfectly fine to be in another career first. We also have applicants with a lot of life experience that they don't apply right after college. And they choose to work, they choose to do research, they choose to sometimes work in other health-related professions. And but again, the passion is there, and it shows. And we're very happy to receive some of those applications, and the committee is very happy with seeing some of those experiences, and read through those applications and look at the dedication and the value that those applicants, the non-traditional applicants, bring to the school. So regardless of where you start, again, careers are not a straight line. Just tell your story, be genuine, and discuss what brought you to medicine and why you want to do that. And I think that's the most important thing that the committees take into account.
Thank you so much, Giannis. So Sheila, I'm going to ask this question of you, and then Wendy, I'm going to flip it a little and ask the same question of you. So we have a question here that says, does where you do your post-bac program influence which medical school accepts you? For example, doing one at a community college versus a private university. So Sheila, is that something you look at when you are looking at individuals who've completed post-bacs?
And some of the individuals go to a specific post-bac program, which is great. And it's nice that you get a letter from the post-bac program. But let's say a student has been out practicing law for many years. For someone like that, it might really work better for them to take prereqs individually at a different, at a specific program. And so we do look at the overall academic record from both undergraduate and the post-bac. So if we had someone that really had a different career trajectory and they're working and taking different courses, I think we would look at that very favorably. If it's someone who really needs to show that they are able to handle multiple courses at the same time, sometimes the structured post-bacs look a little bit better because we know that there's a little more intensity and there's more work at the same time. If that makes sense.
Yes, thank you. And then Wendy, what I wanted to ask you was, can you help our audience understand how you advise your students to pursue post-bacs? How they should think about that?
Yeah, so I'm going to think about this in terms of record enhancer post-bac programs, because I think that's really what the question's asking. And so I do think that students should be focusing on programs that allow them to tackle advanced content. So that for that reason, it does sort of eliminate community colleges, because you're looking at 300 or 400 level courses. You're looking at coursework that is asking you to integrate material that maybe you've learned at the lower level. So, and schools really want to see that you are able to handle coursework at a rigorous load. So we tend to tell students, take a full time, take a year, take 24 to 30 credits, take advanced program coursework or basic sciences through a structured record enhancer master's or special master's program or certificate program, and wait until you've completed it to apply. That's another question we get all the time. Can I be doing these simultaneously? And the answer is, like, technically you can, but if you're in a post-bac program, you're there for a reason, and it's because you have something to demonstrate, and schools will want to see how it goes. So taking that year, finishing the program, showing that you can earn about a 3.5 or better in rigorous coursework is really what you need to be doing if you need a record enhancer program. And I feel really strongly about that. And I have this conversation literally all the time. And I will also say that our data does show that while students do a lot of post-bac programs at different places, what we've noticed is they very often matriculate where they did the post-bac program. And that may not be national data, Amy, but that's what we've noticed over time.
Thank you so much, Wendy. Giannis and Sheila, I'm going to ask this question of both of you. Help us decipher what it means when you have courses listed as recommended. Should a student take that course to be considered competitive for your program, or is it truly simply a recommendation?
Yeah, I can say for GW, it's simply a recommendation. It's not mandatory to take any of the courses listed on our website, and we say it. These are just recommendations. And of course, we do a holistic review of the application. The committee does that. And we take into account all possible courses that someone takes, and we don't mandate any specific courses to be taken before they apply to med school.
How about you, Sheila?
So we actually have a list of mandated courses, and they're not a lot. And beyond that, we like to see that a student is following their passion. You know, it's fun for us to see the English major, someone who's just taken something a little off the beaten track and done something that they love, because many of these other fields really round out their education and will make them better doctors. You know, something that they are excited about and makes them think in a different way.
Thank you so much, Sheila. There's a few questions in the chat that relate to AMCAS specific questions that I don't believe we are addressing in this session. I don't want to leave them unanswered, but there's questions about the fee waiver and letters of recommendation. Please reach out to AMCAS directly. And if we could drop the email address or the phone number for AMCAS for applicant support services, that would be really great. Again, just trying to do our best to get out most of your questions answered here. So here's the question. If you have a particular interest in a program, what's the best way to show it to that school? So Wendy, let's start with you. What do you encourage your students to do if they really, really, really want to be at a particular place? Sheila, what do you like to see? Giannis, what do you like to see?
This is a hard one, because unlike applying to undergraduate institutions where there really literally is a school for everyone, I mean, there are only so many medical schools, and it's really hard to say that you have your heart set on a particular school. So I'll just start by saying you're going to apply to 15 or 20 schools. You're going to have your heart set on the ones you apply to, and you're going to study the mission statements first so that you apply to the right schools. I really think that that's a good starting point. And then, you know, after that, the secondaries almost always ask you to talk about why this school, and treat that really carefully, because schools are really interested in not just knowing that you want to be in Philadelphia because you've always loved the city, but like what specifically about Jefferson and what it is that they do, and, you know, the hospitals that you can rotate through and the pathologies that you can see based on the patients that you know that they care for. You know, express those things really very specifically. And your secondary is your best opportunity to do it.
And for us, one of the big things that students automatically demonstrate by applying to us is that they've gone through a different system, the Texas Medical and Dental School Application System, TMDSAS, which means they've actually taken the time to apply in a fully different system, write different essays, because they're slightly different. And it's actually a lot more information in the TMDSAS application for them to fill it out versus AMCAS. And then we also have our secondaries as another way to really demonstrate interest.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I have to say, I see a lot of times people responding to, why do you want to, you know, be at our school? I'm a big foodie, and DC is a great place to be. That's great, and I appreciate that. And we all take advantage of our local food scene, but you should look deeper and understand what each school offers, and what are some elements that are attractive to you. What is it that you really want to focus on, or what would you like to do? What types of populations or areas would you like to serve or learn from? So these are some things that you have to consider before you apply to specific schools. And I'm not sure about other schools, but we are happy to hear from applicants. We encourage them to talk to us. They can email us. We have a dedicated email, and it is perfectly fine to hear from our applicants. You know, if they have questions or they're interested in us, that's a great way to show it.
Thank you so much. Here's another question that I have, and I think I'll ask each of you to address this one as well. What are some common false green flags that cause applicants to believe they're ready to apply when really they're not ready to apply? Wendy, do you want to start first, since they begin at your place with their
Yes, I'm
pre-health
glad to go first because I think we're all going to have the same answer, so I'm going to steal it. You have really high GPA, then you get a great MCAT score, and you think that's all I needed. And I promise you that medical schools could fill their classes with the applicants that they have that have high metrics. Like we said, neutralizing the importance of that so they can see you as a whole applicant is really meaningful to schools. And I will tell you that every year I have students with 4.0s and 523s who don't get a single interview. And it's because they applied without doing the work to demonstrate the will you do it part of the application.
Okay, so very similarly, if you can't really demonstrate that you know what medicine is about, that you're going to enter a field where you're not only going to spend 4 years in medical school, but do an entire residency before you actually get a job. You really have to demonstrate that you understand it, you know it, you've been in a situation where you're making a thoughtful decision about it. And then the other thing, it makes me so sad, honestly, there's so many fantastic applicants who don't get in, and it does break my heart just a little bit. And I love to think, if you get everything together and do it at the right time, you save yourself the heartbreak of applying, not getting in, and then having to pick yourself back up, because that's that kind of slows the roll forward. And it's heartbreaking when you've done all this work and you think it's enough. So it's important to talk to your pre-med advisors and to get a really robust application, because it's much nicer to apply once so you don't have to go through the heartbreak.
Yeah, one piece of advice that I actually offered some applicants sometimes when asked is, if you were an admissions officer or a member of the admissions committee and you looked at all the things that you've done and how you present yourself, would you consider you as a good applicant for medical school? Sometimes it's good to do that self-reflection, and of course you have to be objective. And I'm sure if you understand the realities and what it means to be a physician, you'll be able to see that and in your application as well. But take a step back and pretend you're somebody that works in admissions and review your application through that lens. And if you think that it looks good and that you would convince someone that this is what you want to do and this is your passion, then go for it.
Thank you so much. We've got a few minutes left, so I'll ask a few more questions. Here's another one that might feel like a false green flag. So what if you go to grad school, for example, go to an MPH program, instead of taking a post-bac program to show that you can take multiple science courses, and you graduate with honors from the MPH program? Would that substitute or look as good as completing a post-bac if you're trying to enhance your GPA? What do you think about that, Sheila?
I think it's a little harder as something to just enhance a GPA. As something to enhance an application, it's wonderful. But as something to just enhance someone who's had a real, difficulty demonstrating that they're able to handle the rigor of a science curriculum, I think that piece kind of sits out apart.
Yep. Thank you so much for that. Yanis, I'm going to come back to you with another question for a non-traditional applicant. What should they have on their application that'll make them very attractive to you as a med school?
For our med school, again, we like very service-oriented applicants and applicants that will show that they want to learn and serve diverse populations. So I would say any type of experience that involves that, that shows that, and again, we're not talking about a lot of people when you talk about healthcare experience, for example, they think shadowing. Shadowing is one way to show that you have a exposure to healthcare settings, but not the only thing. I mean, there are multiple ways that you can do, volunteer work, or serve a community through many different programs to show your dedication to the field and also your passion to help others. I think that's the most important thing to show.
Excellent, thank you. Sheila, do you have a minimum requirement for clinical experiences? There's a lot of questions in the chat about clinical experiences. Obviously, the pandemic eliminated some of those opportunities. So when would a person know that they've got enough clinical as far as you're concerned?
I think that is a little bit of a tough one. We don't have a minimal number, and definitely the pandemic made it very, very difficult. But most students will, and I'll give you a number, most students will have at least 50, most even kind of 80 and above as kind of just a general number. But it doesn't necessarily need to be shadowing. A lot of students that we accept have done a lot of work with EMS, and a lot of our students have been scribes, and those are really hands-on activities that allow the students to get a feeling for what medicine is like. And there's a lot of even virtual scribing that happened so much during pandemic, and that too, even though you're not exactly in the room, there is a lot to be learned from that scribing experience.
Thank you so much. So I see we're at our last 5 minutes. If I can turn it over to all of our panelists, if there's one piece of advice that you'd like to share with our attendees, what would that be? And Amy, I'll start with you. I'll go in order of presentation.
No pressure, but I'm going to build, I think, actually on how folks answered the question about the false green flags, which was an excellent question, by the way. And I think that's really being able to understand and communicate your why. I think that's a really important piece, and that can be a hard thing to do, but I do think it's a really critical it's a really critical question to be able to answer for yourself before you even embark on something this difficult, and then to be able to answer and communicate to the medical schools.
Excellent advice, Amy. Thank you. Wendy?
I think I would encourage people to really spend a lot of time in self-reflection, and really think about, I mean, Amy, I think I agree with you about the why. But since that's kind of already been said, one thing that I tell my students often is to start with the end in mind and think about where you see yourself when you've completed this process, and then sort of working backwards. If you think like, I want to be a doctor and an educator, then think about making sure that you've demonstrated that you can go and maybe be a TA for a course, or maybe educate others in the community. So, be true to your story and try it out before you move forward.
I love
Excellent
that,
advice, Wendy. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Sheila.
No, I love the being authentic, being, such an important part of an application. So when I look at applicants, the one thing I really think about is, if I were a patient, would I feel comfortable sharing my story with this person? So those are some of the attributes. I love if someone's taken the time to understand that when you go into a patient room, you want to hear their story. You want to make a personal connection. You want to make someone feel comfortable so that they can share something that might be very personal with you, and that they can really feel like you care about them. So if there are things that develop those pieces of yourself along the way, I think that's a wonderful thing to do. And it also helps you make sure that this is what you want to do for the rest of your life. It's a long haul, so you want to make sure that this is what you love.
And I think it's really important also to try some different things. So we get the question a lot of times, what is the best experience that I could have in terms of clinical experience, research experience? I would say we have many applicants with so many diverse experiences. Try things out. Some things will work and some things won't, and it's okay. It's part of the process. It's part of what shows your perseverance and your dedication. So try things and tell your story. I think that's the most important thing.
Thank you so much, Giannis, and thanks so much for all of our panelists, and mostly thank you to all of our attendees here. We're over 1,000 attendees in the session. We really hope that you found this valuable. The recording will be available. Who's going to be at the fair tomorrow? Yana, so will you be at the fair tomorrow? Is your school there?
Yes. Mhm.
Great. Sheila, will you be at the fair? Awesome.
Our school will be there.
Perfect.
Or-
And Wendy, I know you're not with the Met School, but I know you're always an attendee, and I'll be there as well. So please feel free to stop by our booths, and the AAMC will have multiple booths. As you saw in the chat, please do go to the AAMC booth so that you can have all your application questions answered. Good luck, everybody. We look forward to seeing you. Bye.